Alright guys, so for the purpose of kind of speeding this up, I'm going to use my old bezel in housing, just so I can get it back installed and you can see how it goes in. The bezel is going to have to be repainted and the housing is still drying, so I don't have to prolong this any more than I need to. So where we're at now is we've got because I'm using the GPS speedo, I've got my speedometer cable to the transmission just taped off, not using it. I've got all my wires jumped off that I'm going to be using. You're going to want to go on to online somewhere. I mean, I've got mine off of I believe it was MalibuRacing.com, and find out which wires are which. I've jumped it off the bottom before, it didn't work properly, so I went into this connector. These pin settings will probably be different every few years, so the 78 may not be the same as a 84, 85. Also, the round SS clusters are in the long speedo, or the pins are going to be different on the connector. So what we're going to do now is we're going to test fit everything, make sure it's working properly. As far as all the connectors, you don't want to get, you don't want to install everything and it's not working right. So I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so where we're at is we got all the wires hooked up. The positive negative jumpers are not, and the mile per hour is not, because that's going to the GPS speedo. So again, just want to make sure you cut it on, test everything. There we go. It looks blurry on the camera, but I mean they're bright, but they're crystal clear. There's no discolorations. There's no lighter or brighter ones, LEDs. So everything's working. So now that we know that all the connectors are working, we can go ahead and put our housing in. Hook up our cover, put our dust cover on, and then put our bezel on. Alright, so let's go ahead and start reassembling everything. I went ahead and disconnect the battery again. Don't want anything to short out. Push our pin connector through. And what I was mentioning before on the shift lever indicator, this is the thin wire that connects it all. This will come over here and come up like this, so whenever you're shifting back and forth. So if you're going to keep any of this, again, be cautious on how you take everything apart, so that way you can get it all back together the proper way. I'm not going to be keeping that, so I just kind of tuck it in the back, just in case in the future I do want it. These wires over here are my tweeter wires that I have in my dash. So the first thing we'll do is just kind of hide them, or not hide, but move the wires to where your housing can sit. You're going to feed your headlight and windshield wiper through the housing. So from here you can line up your 6 holes that your housing mounts to. Which mine are pretty well lined up. This is why I did my jumpers. This is the power, ground, and the speedometer cables from the GPS speedo unit. So I'm gonna go ahead and start putting the top ones in. I just have them just not too tight. A little snug by hand. Once you got them all snug by hand, just give it a little wiggle. See if it settled in there correctly. And as long as you feel comfortable it did, you go ahead and start moving over to the next steps. So now, what we'd want to do is go ahead and jump our GPS speedo over. So now, we're gonna snake our wires in between the steering column and the little cubby hole over here. There you go. Sit over. And again, on the bottom of the metal piece, they have guides that you will line up. I'm just putting the top two in just to hold it while I snake the wires through the bottom. The wires I'm moving now are the ones that are coming behind the gauges. So I'm going to want to make sure they all just sit in here. Don't have to make anything pretty. It's going to be hidden. And I want to make sure this bottom piece slides into the guide pieces properly. With the bottom one lined up, I'm going to go ahead and put a screw in there. Alright, so at this point, if you're happy with your install on the progress, before you would have put this piece on, you would have tightened up the housing, your 3 nuts up top. You can still get to the 2 in the bottom, but you definitely want to make sure that you get them tightened up, properly. We've got the metal piece, our gauges, our plexiglass from the Home Depot that's all installed. We've got our metal piece installed. We've got our housing installed, and again, if you're happy so far with your progress, make sure all your bolts and nuts are tightened up. Before you would have put this piece on, you get 3 for the housing that you would make sure you got it secured. Before we go any further, cut it on, make sure it's working. Again, you don't want to get to the final stage just thinking everything's going to work properly. On the GPS speedo, it's all lit up properly. I don't know if you can really see that or not, but that's where we're at. We got pretty much everything installed. So the next step would be, since everything's working, go ahead and get all these wires tied off, wire tied, get them stuck in this cubby hole. That way we can put our dust cover on and our bezel on. Go ahead and get our dust cover on, and we're going to take the 4 bolts out and put them back in for our dust cover. Alright, so we're going to line up and make sure your RPM and odometer buttons line up as well. Don't just force it on there. These 2 are lined up in there. Start the top ones. And this is where it gets a little tricky. You just want to make sure. Again, this piece is, the dust cover is curved fairly good. The plexiglass you just put in there is flat, so there's going to be some pushback on it So you want to make sure when you get it in there, you get it all lined up properly. Your alignment pieces on the bottom are where they should be. You want to be careful when you tighten this. You don't want to crack anything. You get your dust cover, which is acrylic, and then you get your plexiglass. Last thing you want to do is hear, or you know, it's a horrible sound, I guess. Alright, so put it on, check it out, make sure everything's still working. It is. So you still need to go in and get all your wires in this cubby hole, and then get your mounting bracket for your headlight and windshield wiper. Get that in there. I'm kind of doing this. I'm taking all this apart, you know, so when I do the original or the other red and black housing and bezel, I have to tighten everything down and redo everything. So this step would be to, once you get all your wires tucked up, I mean the next step, the final step, is get your bezel put back on. Alright, so this is, I guess, would be your ultimate goal, or finished goal would be to have the gauges in. You got your bezel on, you got all your wires tucked into behind this cubby hole. Again, I didn't put the headlight or windshield wiper back in just because I'm going to take all this back off whenever I get my blue gauges in, so there's no reason to tighten everything and all that good stuff. This is your top, and this is why I said to make sure you paint, because you may have a gap in there. I have a gap in mine, and I think it's because of that extra layer of plexiglass. So you want to make sure you paint your housing, just to make sure you've got, you know, everything covered. You can just paint the same color you're painting the rest of it. And again, I am particularly fond of the Intellitronix gauges in a GBody, the long speedo. I definitely like the way they look. And this is with them off. So this is with the gauges off, and with them on. And then you can go in, and I guess you could have done this before, which I can't. Oh, maybe I can. There's your left. No, I can't get it. Oh, there it is. The right, left. I don't have my headlight switch in to check the dimmer, but I'm sure it's working. I broke my turn signal lever, so I'm waiting for the new one to come in and install that. So I guess before, you know, whenever you're first doing, you know, your test fit and make sure everything is working, that's where you would check to make sure your turn signals are working, your dimmer is working when you cut your headlights on, so on and so forth. So, alright guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and comment. Yeah, I might have left out some steps, but you go from, you know, your stock gauges to some Intellitronix 6 gauge. This is the 6 gauge cluster. If you're doing the 5 gauge cluster, it'd be the same thing. You've got your, I'm trying to hold the light and film at the same time. You got your 2 buttons here for your RPM. If you don't know if you've seen that to the left of the 0, I'll let you recall. And then you got your button over here for your odometer, trip, all that good stuff. or I'm sorry, this is for your RPM side. It'll have your RPM recall. I believe you can do a quarter mile timing and all that good stuff, which I don't do. This isn't a hot rod. If the gauges look different on the camera or on the video, then you know, like this one's brighter than that one. They're not. They're all the same brightness in person. Maybe the camera may be picking it up differently. Hope you enjoyed the videos. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm redoing a 1981 K5 Blazer 4x4. It's going to be a little bit longer process. The gauges are fairly simple to install. If you were doing a 5 gauge, it'd be the same thing as this one, except you wouldn't have the RPM. So your fabrication, everything's the same. Line up all the wiring. And again, if you have any comments, just let me know. Thanks for watching, and my next video will probably start being on, hopefully, replacing a turn signal in the GBody. If not, it'll start being on my K5 Blazer until I redo the engine bay on here and paint and chrome the engine and rebuild the engine and all that good stuff. Thanks, guys.